Good evening, South Brunswick. I call the meeting to order. Please rise for the salute of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Got too many papers. Okay. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the board secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library in the board office, filed with the township clerk, and communicated to the Home News and the Star Ledger. Mr. Plowski, roll call, please.
Mr. Roger Krishna. Mr. Ray Keener.
Here.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta.
Here.
Mr. Mike Mitchell. Dr. Stephen Parker.
Here.
Dr. Smith Raj. Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti.
Here.
Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Here.
We have your quorum.
Thank you. Moving along, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Moved by Mr. Mitchell. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Moving along, board minutes of October 14th, 2021. Moved by Mrs. Rogers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keener. All in favor? Thank you. Moving along, report of student representative, Victoria.
Hello? All right.
There you go.
Good evening. Oh, sorry. All right.
You got to talk in the mic, Victoria.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For our meeting for today, we will be starting off with activities. The week of October 25th is our National Red Ribbon Week. SBHS wore red to raise awareness for promoting drug prevention. For Veterans Day, the Student Council is creating door decorations and posters for our following beloved veterans: Gene Hutmaker, U.S. Army; Britton Arnold, U.S. Army; Raymond Ostrowski, U.S. Army; Raymond Quinones, U.S. Army National Guard; Ethan Zimmer, U.S. Navy; and Yoshi Donato, U.S. Army. Ladies and gentlemen, please see the date of January 13th to the 15th. On these days will be the Pandero player production of the 12 Angry Jajuros. Moving along, we have quite a bit of info regarding athletics. For cheerleading, the varsity cheerleading team competed for the first time in 2 years at the GMC Game Day Cheerleading Championship. The team had received first place in the white division, beating 7 other teams. Congratulations to our South Brunswick cheerleaders. We are all so proud of you guys. For girls gymnastics, the SBHS gymnastics team had participated in the GMCs on October 23rd. Riley O'Brien, Sarah Finkelstein, Grayson Manzino qualified for sectionals, which will all take place on Saturday, November 6th. We can't wait to see you guys perform. For girls soccer, Caitlin Bourne was one of the 18 players in the county nominated for the All-Red Division All-Conference this season. Congratulations on your nomination, with the mother in the audience. Boys and girls cross country. And this past weekend, the boys and girls cross country teams won the GMC championships at the Thompson Park. The girls won a close meet over Metuchen, 52-54. This is the 5th GMC title in the school history for the boys program and the 13th for the girls. We applaud you all for keeping the title with our South Brunswick name on it. Now, for marching band. Last weekend, the marching band competed at the Robbinsville High School and placed first with the jaw-dropping 91.7. This is being our highest score at the entire show. Huge success. Now, this weekend, the Viking Marching Band will be competing at the New Jersey State Championship in Old Bridge. Saturday, November 6th, the Viking Band will conclude its competitive season by competing in the U.S. Band's National Championship at the MetLife Stadium. We all wish you the best of luck. For volleyball, The students have been awarded the Sportsmanship Award for the Red Division. Go Vikings! Piggybacking off of volleyball, the boys soccer had also been awarded the Sportsmanship Award for the Red Division. Senior Chris Shetty was recognized as an all-Red Division player. Congrats on your recognition. And last but not least, we have football. For football, the 2 South Brunswick football players that were recognized for their achievements after our 6th-week win after J.P. Stevens. Demarion Potts was given the Jersey Sports Bone Belt for the play of the week after he hauled a one-handed touchdown pass. One-handed, emphasis on that. Brian Rawls Jr. was named the GMC Player of the Week for the same game after leading the team in receiving a rushing for a touchdown and intercepting a pass for a touchdown. It's crazy. Congratulations to the both of you and the rest of the team for getting touchdowns for our Vikings. Our last home game, ladies and gentlemen, will be held at home versus Bridgewater Racing tomorrow on October 29th. Please, please come support our Vikings on Neon Night with the kickoff starting at 6:00 p.m. We hope to see you all there. That is all I have for you guys for the night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving along to the report of Superintendent, Mr. Fetter.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Nice crowd tonight. This is a really nice crowd for us these days. Today, I want to start off by acknowledging that October, in case we don't know, is National Principals and Assistant Principals Month. Now, I don't know if everyone understands what happens in a school from the principal's perspective. Oh, they're all here over here. Look at that.
Yeah.
So what happens is, in a pandemic, when everything else is perfect, you're dealing with situations such as student health and staff health. That's not normally the way a school day starts in a school when there's no pandemic. In fact, it doesn't usually account for much time at all. Now we add a situation where for 18 months, students, in this district, the majority of students, had not stepped foot into a school. We're going to talk about the impact of that exact situation as we talk about HIB and bullying and all of that in a little bit. But this year, not only has that, not only has the issues of student behavior, but this year, if I asked any one of those people up over there in that corner and said, how does your day start every day? They're going to say something to the effect of, I have to find a way to get coverage for kids when there's nobody to cover. So I either teach the class myself, beg somebody to go over there and take the kids, move kids from one place to the other, or find some other magical solution to how to do that. It is a crazy task, because at the same time they're doing that, they have staff that are also stressed. They have parents who are calling them stressed. The level of stress in a school building right now is over the top. Overwhelming, but they don't make it feel like it's overwhelming. Somehow they manage it. I don't know how you do it. So, in honor of October National Principal and Assistant Principals Month, you get my standing ovation, guys. And I didn't mention any of the tiers, so don't worry. Not one. Not one time did I mention the tiers. But the reality is, you know, this past year has been something else, and I think we all thought, parents included, and board members and kids, that we were going to come back to September to a sign of what was. Just maybe with masks, but we figured we could manage it. I don't think, even though we planned on things, that we thought it was going to be this. I don't think we considered the staffing. The staffing is probably one of the biggest problems. It's not just bus drivers. It's, do we have all of our nurses in? It's, do we have all of our paraprofessionals? Do we have all of our teachers? It's every day. And that is the reality of being a principal and assistant principal right now. It is truly some of the craziest times we've all ever dealt with. And I know that families are like, yeah, it's that way at home too. And I'm sure it is. They are often not the recognized group, but they are, you know, heart and soul of a school system as well. They're leading every day, and at the same time, they're making determinations on how we can still keep the academic rigor going at the same time. and they work with their teachers and their paraprofessionals and the custodians and the secretaries and everybody, and they're just in charge of that area. And it's something else. So again, it's not the only reason I invited you here tonight, but I did want to say that in person to you, and know that we all understand what you're going through, and we feel bad at Black Horse often because we don't have solutions to some of the problems that you guys are facing. And so thank you. Thank you, seriously, thank you very much. And you still have to stay for a little bit while longer, though. Maybe a little bit. I want to talk about virtual learning for a minute. As you know, we had a delayed opening. And I think if I was a layperson, was it Tuesday? It's Tuesday? If I was a layperson, didn't have kids in the school, or even if I did have kids in the school, and if you looked outside around 8:30, 9 o'clock, you'd be like, what in the world was that guy thinking? Why would you have possibly called a delay opening? It's almost sunshiny soon. It makes no sense. Let me just read this to you. If you got did anyone get an alert on their phone on Tuesday at around 7 o'clock in the morning? Here's the alert you received, if you did receive one. Emergency alert, severe, from the National Weather Service. A flash flood warning is in effect for this area until 11 a.m. This is a dangerous and life-threatening situation. Do not attempt to travel unless you are fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation order. Oh, or you're going to school. Doesn't say that part. Or if you're going to school. The government of New Jersey has decided that we cannot use a virtual learning day regardless of any kind of hazardous situation. If every time we get an alert like that, or the governor calls a state of emergency, which usually happens probably about 30 times in a winter, I'm not exaggerating. If I close the schools every time, we would have no spring break, we would have no winter break, and we would still be going to school in July. I don't know about you, but if I try to bring teachers and kids back to school during our April break right now, I'm going to fend for my life going to my car. If I try to have school extend into late June this year, it's not going to happen. So we are in this incredibly difficult situation where if we don't close, we are asking 17-year-old brand new drivers to get on the road in the dark, in a flood potential situation, who are not fleeing or evacuating. That's what we're dealing with. So when people want to ask the question, why would you call a 2-hour delay? Because it's the best I got. That's the tools I got in my toolbox. That's the best I got. I could not have 17-year-old drivers driving in the dark with that warning on my phone. I also could not ask our staff to come from somewhere, an hour away, to come here going through their flooding situations. We are in a very difficult situation, and we still cannot apply what we know we can do, virtual learning. Am I saying to do it for every kid all the time? Absolutely not. But are there circumstances that make perfect sense? Yes, there are. And we are trying to lobby as a group of superintendents to get that changed. Maybe it'll change after Tuesday. I don't know. But as of right now, we're doing the best we can with what we got. And unfortunately, that's what we got on this one. I put out a letter to everybody, to the community, about a committee, an important committee, transportation and school start times. And we did get, I think we got 52 people from our school community. That includes staff and families who put in for that. We're going over the final list because what we want is a cross-section. We want representation of elementary, middle, high school, people that have different experiences to bring into the committee. So we'll be informing people shortly about that. Unfortunately, we can't take everybody. It'd be a committee of way too many people. But that's really going to be important, and we're going to be sharing. So people that signed up or weren't able to sign up because the dates didn't work, just know we're going to also be doing a lot of work sharing with the board openly, regularly, on all the progress made. The meetings start in November. They will end with a conclusion where we'll be asking the board to vote on whatever comes their way. Whatever the final recommendations are will come to the board at the February 24th meeting. But before February 24th, there'll be plenty of opportunities for the community staff and board to fully understand the why behind anything that's being recommended, as well as the impact of what's being recommended, both good and problematic. In fact, I'm going to be honest with the board and the community and say, I don't see any circumstances that don't involve something that will make somebody unhappy. But that's pretty much the story of a superintendent's life, is we make someone unhappy with almost every decision we make. But in this particular case, to do what we need to do to combat massive outside forces, it's going to be some tough decisions. So just putting that out there, I've been honest about that from the beginning. I'm going to move on. Just so everyone knows, we're still looking for bus drivers, paraprofessionals, lunch aides, nurses, substitutes, anybody. There's emergency certification possibilities that exist now. So again, looking for anyone who's interested in joining us. And we'll figure out, if you want to work for us, we'll figure out how to make you work for us. I don't know what you'll do, but we'll figure that out. Principals, do you care what they can do? They can breathe. Is that good? Send breathing people. Yeah, we'll send breathing people. Reminder for next week. Next week, Monday, is parent-teacher conferences. So that's all day. You probably already scheduled that. And then we have Tuesday and Wednesday are closed for kids, and teachers and staff will be doing professional development. So next week is and Thursday and Friday is the NJEA convention, traditional in New Jersey. So next week for students, they're getting, I'm sure, a much relieved break. Our staff is getting a nice break, but not quite as long as our students. Some of our staff are getting a nice break, and we're happy to give that to them. They all deserve it. So that's where we are for next week. Keep that in mind. I have some information I'm going to be sharing on HIB, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this part of my opening to after we give you the update on HIB, which Blair Eisman will be providing us in a little bit. So before I finish, we haven't seen them in a while, but they're here. The Ed Foundation, with Marty Abschutz and Bobby Binder, are here to talk to our community. Welcome. No, you're good. Okay. You're good.
You can hear me? Oh, yeah, you can hear me. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me and Marty Abschutz to speak to you for a few minutes about the Ed Foundation. My name is Bobby Binder, and I'm the treasurer of the Ed Foundation of South Brunswick. It's so nice to see everyone in person and smiling tonight. The Ed Foundation's been very busy this past year, and we'd like to share what we've been up to. This past June, we held our first and hopefully annual scavenger hunt. We had 35 teams with 133 participants. The purpose of the hunt was to build community awareness through the visitation and enjoyment of public places and commercial locations throughout South Brunswick Township. Participants were given 20 clues around town. They had to find the locations and take photos, oftentimes selfies or with other people like police officers and postal delivery people. Then they had to send those photos to us, and we received 600 photos. Winners were awarded prizes in the form of gift certificates to South Brunswick restaurants. Everyone who participated had a really great time.
The Ed Foundation held our first board and brush event earlier this month. Participants picked out their own sign design and painted it as they fancied. It was fun for everyone. The Ed Foundation has partnered with the South Brunswick School District and the South Brunswick Library to collect used printer cartridges. Look for the collection boxes at each school building, the board office, the district maintenance building, and the South Brunswick Public Library. Funds raised will allow the foundation to continue its work supporting the district's students and staff via scholarships and Spark of Innovation grants, like the 175 document cameras funded this past February. These document cameras are great instructional aids. 175 cameras allow the district staff to use them in every grade in every school. This grant for document cameras brought the total amount the foundation has awarded back to the district to $232,000, including $58,000 in the form of capital grants. Please remember that we have our ongoing giving opportunity, the Beam of Light. This is a great way to recognize an individual or group of staff members as the holiday season approaches. A complete list of awardees is on our website.
I'm thrilled and excited to officially announce that the Tour of South Brunswick is coming back this spring, all things being equal, and will be held on June 12th. This bike and walk event is our most successful participation event. If you recall, we've had over 700 people walk and ride in the past on one given day in support of the Ed Foundation and the PE departments in our district. Details and a much more interesting presentation by me will be forthcoming this spring. Please continue to look for more information and opportunities from the Ed Foundation in your students' Friday folders and on our website, edfoundationsb.org or efsb.org. Thank you and have a great rest of your night. Be safe and keep smiling under your mask because we can see the smiles in your eyes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you, Ms. Bender, with your helmet on. So, yeah. There you go. Okay, moving along, we're moving to presentations. The first is Scott Fetter. He's doing the LEA plan for safe return to in-person instruction and continuing of service.
All right, so every 60 days, as part of school state code, we have to give you an update on where we are with COVID and all the different components of it. Yeah, thanks. I'll give a second if the board members want to come out. So this is our 60-day share in regarding our return to in-person. We are still operating under the same guidance. There's been no real update to the road forward. It exists pretty much as it existed back in, I'm not sure if it came out in June or August. June, July, or August, I'm not really sure anymore. But that is our guiding structure that we use to make decisions. What has happened since then, there's been some additions to it, but it pretty much still functions in the same way. The relevant topics to talk about tonight are things that are kind of the newer situations, and I want to share with you about COVID specifically. But I want to talk about vaccinations, communication, and the other things that there's nothing really to talk about, there's no change. But in vaccinations, so we are, as a whole staff, we're 93% vaccinated. That's from anyone who works in the district, almost 1,300 employees. It's pretty good. But look at the students. Our eligible students are over 75%. Mr. Varela, the high school is over 78% vaccinated students. 78%, huge. I'll tell you, it's making a big difference. Now, we did have a hiccup at North. North people know that we had a hiccup at North anyway. Well, we did close down 6th grade to shut it down. It worked though, right, Kim? It worked. Not a case since, so that was good. We needed to just kind of clean the air, I guess, so to speak, and it worked really well. So that's really important, and I'll get into a few more things. Communication, I want to remind everybody, there are 2 important things to hit on our website. As soon as you open our website, they're right there. One is a COVID dashboard. If you are that person that likes to follow the numbers, you can see the breakdown of every school. You can see quarantines. You can see staff and students that have COVID or as well as been quarantined. It's all there for everyone to see. Very, very transparent. Things that come up, questions about these things come up, and right now there's no changes. There's no changes to masks. We're still obviously wearing them. There's no change to our process for contact tracing or quarantine instruction. I will say the one area of quarantine instruction that we did get a lot of questions on in the beginning were, why can't my child have a link when he has a symptom? And the reality was, to be honest, it's unmanageable for us. It was overwhelming at this point. Maybe at some point that'll change, but as of right now, there's still no change to that. And travel quarantine was another area we were considered changing to look at, do we want to do that? Meaning right now, domestic travel for an unvaccinated person still requires a quarantine, whether you're a staff member or a student. We did some talking, and it's probably a 50-50 split about what we should do. So the deciding factor went to our doctor, and our doctor said, don't do anything different. He said, you're doing well. You're in a good place. Why would you change it now? You have a week off. There's going to be a lot of traveling. Do you really want to start that? Then you have Thanksgiving. You have more traveling. Do you want to deal with that? So his opinion was, until the CDC makes a change, just leave it be. You're being successful. I'm going to show you in a little while how successful the district has been. And while this is where all the credit goes to our families, it's great news to share. So vaccinations, so you know, I share with you the numbers. But you also know that if you are not vaccinated and you work in a school district in New Jersey, you are required by law to be tested at least once a week. We signed up with a company called Miramis. Where's Jamie Bomer? Jamie Bomer is over there. She is our on-assignment person who is responsible. She has been managed this entire process, interfaced with the company, and it's gone off beautifully. So thank you, Jamie. Huge. Thank you. And what it means is if you're not vaccinated, you have to be tested every week. That has to be monitored, and it has to be dealt with. It's work. We have to collect the samples. Jamie, did you drop them off again, or did you let UPS come this time? Yeah, Jamie refuses to allow UPS to do its job. She believes she is an extension of UPS, and she will drop off the samples herself. So again, it happens. Last week was our first week, and we had 100% no COVID reported from all of our testing. And we did testing yesterday. Results today yet, or we get results tomorrow? We'll get results tomorrow. If somebody is unable to test, it's a question we get, on that day, they have to produce a negative result by that Monday morning, or unfortunately, they will not be able to come to work. That's the rules. So again, we're being strict, we're following the law, and so far, so good. Thank you again, Jamie, doing an awesome job. Just so you know, in case booster shots are open to all staff. So booster shots are now approved by the FDA, for CDC, FDA, FTC, those numbers and letters, for all staff. So whether you're Moderna, Pfizer, or J&J, you have an opportunity to do that if our staff wants to. If you have children, young children between 5 and 11, you might be following the news. All I'm doing is sharing that there's been movement. Heard talk that it might even be as early as November. So I have obviously no control of this, but when that happens, we'll be glad to do whatever the school can do to support that. We have been talking with Penn about doing vaccination clinics. The problem with doing vaccination clinics for students is they require the parent. So it isn't like we can just have the kids while they're already in school get vaccinated. The parent needs to physically be there. So it might not make any sense to do a vaccination clinic for students. We're still looking at possible vaccination clinics for booster shots. That still might be possible now that we've got all 3 of them are all set. Again, people ask this all the time. If they approve the vaccine, or for 12 years old and up, is there a requirement? There's still no requirement, no mandate by the state or federal government for any vaccinations for students. So that still is exactly the same. That's our story about vaccinations. Reminder for communication, it starts at home. It starts with every parent doing a home health check. And you don't need me to send you a daily reminder to do that, but we still send you a daily reminder, so I apologize for that. But we don't have you fill out a form. It just is a reminder, make sure. It must be working, and I'm going to show you why I say that. On the website, you have the COVID dashboard that I talked to you about. You also have the FAQ. And when it's updated, it is live update. So if we change something and you go on that day, you'll see it. But you might not know there was an update, so every week we send out a weekly update from my office. Marianne Murphy does that, and if there's any change to the FAQ, that change will also be in the update so that we don't expect you to go keep checking the FAQ, but you'll know there's been a change of some kind, you can do that. We believe the communication of this and the constant communication is really important so that people fully know. So, look at this news. The last staff COVID case was October 15th. That's pretty huge. Not one case since. Only 6 students have been positive in 10 days. To date, only under 1% of our students and staff have had COVID. Under 1%. That's our positivity rate, which would have been like beyond low. And finally, this week, 1 case. That's it. So where are we trending? In absolutely the right direction. We are trending in the right direction. That's why we were considering to maybe adjust the travel quarantine. But it's also the reason we're not going to adjust the travel quarantine. Let's go a little longer. November is a crazy month, a lot of travel. We don't want to ruin this. I'd love to come back on the November 11th board meeting and tell you we're still sitting with the 1 case from this week. That would be great. So that's our update. The good news is there's not a lot more to update because we haven't had to do that much changing and all of that. But what it takes now is we do for this, every time we do this, just so the public knows and the board is reminded, this now is a time for public comment, specific on this topic. It doesn't have to be only what I shared. It could be an offshoot of this, but a COVID or pandemic-related topic would be totally appropriate if this is the time to do that. And after the public comment board, I would open up for board questions. So, David, do you want to or Barry, do you want to see if we have any public comment?
Yeah, I guess I have to read the public comment statement if we're going to do it right now.
No, you don't need to read the statement.
No, you sure? Okay.
Does anybody have any public comment?
Yeah, just on COVID or just on the presentation? Seeing no hands. Close the public portion.
Board questions.
Board questions to my right. Anybody to my left? No? Mr. Fetter, you could sit down, I guess.
I think I still can't sit down. So
Oh, okay.
go to the next one.
Okay, moving along to, oh, yeah, you're back. Scott Fetter and Blair, SSDS report with HIB. Blair.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Blair Eisman, Director of Programs and Professional Development. I'm also the district's anti-bullying coordinator. And as a district, I'm just going to wait for my slides to come up. I could tell you, though, while we're waiting, that as a district, we are required to share out our HIB investigation data 2 times a year. The year is broken up into 2 reporting periods. So reporting period 1 is September through December, and reporting period 2 is January through July 1. So tonight, I'm going to be reporting out on our investigation data for reporting period 2 from last school year, January through July 1 of 2021. And then I'll be back sometime in May to share the HIB data for present September through December of 2021. After I'm done sharing out the data, I am going to turn it over to Scott, and he's going to give some data on our violence and vandalism numbers for that same reporting period. For those of you that aren't familiar with the harassment, intimidation, and bullying definition, as a reminder, it is any gesture, any written, verbal, or physical act, or any electronic communication, whether it be a single incident or a series of incidents, that is reasonably perceived as being motivated either by an actual or perceived characteristic or power imbalance, such as race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, or mental, physical, or sensory disability, or any other distinguishing characteristic that takes place on school property, at any school-sponsored function, on a school bus, or off school grounds that substantially disrupts or interferes with the orderly operation of the school or the rights of the other students, and that a reasonable person should know under the circumstances will have the effect of physically or emotionally harming a student or damaging the student's property or placing a student in reasonable fear of physical or emotional harm to his person or damage to his property, or has the effect of insulting or demeaning any student, or creates a hostile educational environment. So again, the following data is from January through July of 2021. So here you could see our numbers at a glance by level and then also district totals. So under investigations, that's the number of reports that we as a district investigated, and confirmed is, of those investigations, the ones that were found to be an act of HIB. So of 10 elementary investigations, 2 were confirmed HIB, 1 investigation at the middle, 0 were confirmed to be HIB. At the high school, 0 and 0, and our district totals for this reporting period are 11 investigations and 2 confirmed HIB. I also broke down those number of investigations by month, just so you can see January through July number of investigations and confirmed HIB. And as you heard me say when giving that lengthy definition of HIB, a protected class needs to be violated. That's a piece of the definition of the law. So during January through July 1 of 2021, you can see the majority of our investigations fell under other. And other can be height, weight, physical appearance. Then we also had gender, sexual orientation, mental disability, and race. The two investigations that were confirmed to be HIB, it was race and gender that were violated. Then wanted to provide you some comparison data from 2015 to 2021, gave a 7-year span just to give you an idea of our numbers over the past handful of years. So this is elementary, 2015 through now. You could see in 2015, that was our highest number of investigations with 21, and in 2020 was our lowest with 9. Of the confirmed HIB, it was 2018 was the highest with 12, and 2020 and 2021 were our lowest confirmed with 2. For middle, that's quite a line chart there. 2016, 17, and 18, there were 5 investigations. Last year, 2021 was a low with 1. Of those investigations, those that were confirmed, our high was in 2018 with 5, and then both 2016 and 2021 were 0. Those were our lows. For high school, in 2017, there were 21 investigations, and in 2021, there were 0. In 2017, there were 7 confirmed, and in 2021, there were 0 as the low. And then here's a look at the district, so elementary, middle, and high combined. 2017 was our high. We had 42 investigations. In 2021, our low was 11. And our confirmed HIB, our highest was in 2019 as a district with 20 confirmed HIBs, and our low was last year with 2. So just to give you some data across the years. As a district, we really do work to be proactive in our HIB prevention. At each school, we have anti-bullying specialists. Elementary schools have 1, the middle schools each have 2, and the high school has 2 as well. So you can see some of the work they did in the name of HIB prevention during this reporting period. Keeping in mind, this is when students returned. We were in our hybrid model. So a lot of students were home, some were in, and this was some of the work that our anti-bullying specialist in collaboration with admin and all staff did. I think what's different during this reporting period than past because of the hybrid is the amount of just weekly meetings between admins and counselors and child study teams checking in on staff and families, lots of communication, more than usual. Lots of work with our SEL committee and SEL week, our school climate committees, the virtual, our mental health fair was still able to run virtually. I thank our ABSs and admin and staff. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
First, thank you, Blair. And you might realize that last year's HIV numbers for those 6 months are extremely low. We were dealing with, I think the high school had about 15% of their kids max on a given day. We just didn't have kids that were here. It just wasn't they weren't coming to us with the issues, even though there were probably more issues that were brought to us. But the numbers are low. It's hard to do a comparison of that year. School safety data talks about the different kinds of infractions. So this is when they're in school suspended, out of school suspended, if there are weapons and all that. You can see the numbers, obviously, for this period of time is extremely low. You're still dealing with a very small percentage of our students. Suspending students that are home just isn't really a thing. So again, it's kind of a skewed data point at this point, but it is our legal obligation to share this, even though I'm telling you this is not data that is good to compare to prior years. But we're sharing it. You can see there just wasn't much of various things here. When there's an HIB confirmed, it does go on the this report as well, so it just shows up in two areas. This is why you'll see those numbers on the left-hand column as well. That's HIB in almost all cases. So that's kind of just what we have, is a breakdown of it by the middle and high school. Suspensions, you'll see ISS means they were in school, and OSS means they were out of school. And it's kind of what it is. Again, this is a period of January to July. That's what we're looking at there. That's it. Again, pretty much more of, again, 16 is, most of those are the HIBs. And there you go. So that's that. But what I want to transition to is to talk about now. Now, our report is about the last 6 months. Let's talk about now. So now it's a different animal now, you saw. So right now, as of yesterday, we already had 19 of these. Already 19, with a higher level of confirming than normal as well. Why is that? If you look on social media and Facebook, it's because the schools are horrible. That's why kids are bullying each other. It's the school's fault. Has to be the school's fault. Who else's fault could it possibly be? Has to be the school's fault. Bad things happen, kids do bad things, it's the school's fault. If you're not sure of this, really, look on Facebook, it's right there. Look on Twitter, I promise you, it's right there. Schools are the fault of bullying. We're to blame, we are always to blame. I am being sarcastic, I am being facetious. The reality is that the world is a different place right now. And there are many, many, many issues out there that are happening. And while I took myself off of a lot of Facebook places over a year ago, healthiest thing I ever did. If you haven't done that yet, do it. Do it, because here's what Facebook is. I want to share my story, so I'm going to share my story. And I'm going to include any part of that story that helps someone understand my point of view. Now, when they use the schools that are involved, it's even better, because the schools cannot respond, reply, offer an alternative view of the same exact story. So it's a perfect place to write something and get everyone to see your version of the reality and the truth. I'm not saying anyone who does that is not writing the exact reality and truth, but there'll never be a second side if the schools are involved. That's the nature of Facebook. It's just the way it goes. It's social media. It's a different world. Schools cannot reply. If someone gets up here and says, bad, 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 I have to sit in that seat and just let it happen. That's the way it goes. I'm okay with that, but that's the way it goes. That's just what it is. We can't talk about kids. We can't talk about situations. We can't talk about staffing issues. We can't do that. That would be so wrong for us to do that. But let's look at our behavior situations. Why? What has changed that we are more than 3 times as many cases at this time this year than we were in 2019 of the same period? Meaning in September and October of 2019, there were 6 cases. And in September and October of 2021, there are 19 current cases. Why? What is it? I don't have all the answers to the why. But we can look to the world and see what's going on and the way people act, adults act. It's truly unbelievable. For some reason, we have lost the ability to disagree with someone without thinking and being the nastiest person on the planet to that person. What happened that we all of a sudden can't have a differing point of view without complete contempt and disgust with the other person? So if you're a kid, look anywhere. That's what you see. It has to be contributing. It has to be contributing. Social media, what TV is, has to be contributing. Now, we're in a political season, So add like 50 times to that, right, in a political season. Because the way some people politic is to make the other person seem like the villain. That's a strategy in politics. We watched it in 2016, we watched it in 2020, and we're going to watch it again every time there's a political election of any kind. That's just the nature of the beast. But even if we weren't in that, if we just go back even before the politics started, it doesn't seem to matter. If someone has an opinion that is different from someone else's, someone feels the right to be mean to that person just because they disagree with their thought. It's unfortunate, but I do believe it's one of the issues. But I'll tell you another issue that we believe is really happening. I was having a conversation with one of our principals, and think of let's go with an 8th grader. Let's go with an 8th grader. Normally, an 8th grader, by the time they're in 8th grade, has had 2 solid years of growth and learning on the social spectrum in 6th grade and 7th grade, right? That's normal. That's what happens. So by the time they get to 8th grade, they've probably made a lot of mistakes. But now they're in 8th grade. They didn't have that. It didn't exist. A year and a half of experience, exposure, times to make little mistakes. They're now making big mistakes. It's got to be part of it, right? 18 months of this abnormal part of life that we've all faced has got to be the major contributing factor. Stress in homes. People have lost jobs. People have other loss, serious loss. That has a major impact on how each of us act, whether you're a kid or you're an adult. It's the nature of who we are as humans. So we're facing all that. But we're not just going to sit as a school district and say that, oh, well, all of these other reasons, there might be 20 other reasons. What we're trying to do is, how do we help? How do we partner with our community? How do we help in our schools so that we can help these kids and these families that are struggling right now? And there's a lot of it. We're dealing with more family struggle than we've ever seen before. It's not just kids. It's family structures have suffered. And while it's not our responsibility, it absolutely is our responsibility. And I will tell you, that corner of the room over there, and all the teachers that work with them, they believe it's their responsibility. And they take it home, they take it to heart. That's what you have in South Brunswick. And we're lucky for that. Just a few things that are happening. So in our middle school, they've taken a period called the Excel period. I'm going to read a little bit. And they develop students socially and emotionally. So instead of focusing on the academic rigor, which is kind of the norm, we have to pull time aside and identify ways to work on their social emotional help and learning and growth. We can't just say, wow, all these things are hard, and then just keep going about doing what we're doing. We have to try and input plans and strategies. Elementary schools are looking to start meetings with certain grade levels so they can talk to that grade level specifically and really listen and share with those kids about what options they have. They're doing various things to check on kids' behaviors. Bathrooms, those undefined areas, they've always been trouble, right? They've been trouble when I was a kid. You know, you know which bathrooms to go in, you know where not to go and all that. Kids are still dealing with that. So we're trying to help that. The schools are trying to figure out ways to make that less of a thing for kids. Take away one area that they have struggled with. All students in grades 2 through 5 have had at least one lesson about HIB law. So we have our counselors working. We have our nurses working. It's a nonstop onslaught from our faculty and then communicating with our parents about what we can do to support our kids. And again, we can't give enough credit. 4th grade classes are in the process. They're doing cyberbullying in 4th grade. Can you imagine that? I remember when my kids are 21 and 19. If I got that wrong, I really am going to pay for that later. But I think it's 21 and 19. And I remember the argument when my second one, my youngest one, when was she going to get the cell phone? Right? Do you remember that? Did you remember that with your kids? When does that happen? I remember the argument used to be 8th grade was the argument. My 21-year-old did not get her cell phone until she was in 8th grade. Wow, that's probably like how many years late now? Is that now, right? It's late now, right? It's incredible. And are they ready to deal with what social media provides at that age? They're not. They're not. Imagine the impact where you post something and you don't get enough likes. Right? Our staff every year does the, the tech, right? And that's one of the things they talked about, the dopamine levels of a like, right? And so can 10-year-olds really handle that? But they are, because they have the phone, so they're learning. probably learning bad habits. Am I saying I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying these things are contributing, and we deal with that at school, and I know parents are dealing with that at home, because here's what you deal with at home, right? If the friend has the phone, and you don't have the phone, you're just a bad parent. And you'll hear that probably all the time. So at some point you might give in. Now you're dealing with that aspect of it. It's just the nature of the beast. The world is changing. Systems are changing. And it is definitely impacting our kids. It is impacting our kids. It is impacting our families. So while I know schools are an easy place to start when things don't go right, I'm not saying we can't do better. We definitely can. We definitely have to. But everyone has to look at all the aspects of a situation to make a determination before they go. I want to read a post. I asked this gentleman if I was allowed to use this post. My wife actually saw this post, and it's on the South Brunswick site. I think his name is Manny Vega. So I spoke with Manny, and I asked him if I was able to use this post. He said yes, so I'm going to read it to him. He was unable to be here tonight because he's a volunteer, and he was volunteering. I think he said, I'm going to be at Crossroads, but the other one. He's got basketball going on tonight. So here's what he wrote. Does anyone think to themselves, what if I'm wrong before posting? Or do you, as a poster of opinions, just think, I'm correct, and the world needs to know that I'm correct? We ask more from others than we ask from ourselves. I think that type of thought process is backwards. We ought to demand better from ourselves every day. We don't have to react to a negative post. We can hit ignore, we can unfollow, we can block, which is the exact advice we got from our parents back in the day. Remember when those kids were mean way back when? Mom and Dad said, they aren't your friends, so just ignore them. I'm sure I heard that 1,000 times from my mom and dad. It's what we told our kids, or even tell them now. I even go further and say, don't post anything that can hurt someone else. Well, if you look at the South Brunswick community page and you're looking to buy property in South Brunswick, why in the world would you? Why in the world, if you're looking for property in South Brunswick and you see that site, I would turn the other way and I'd run 1,000 miles away from here. This seems like a place of horrible people who live here, who bash each other, criticize each other, nasty, show hate and disgust for others. Why in the world would I move to that town? That's so unfortunate, and so not what I know of this town at all. In fact, that's a small pocket of people in this town, but that's who's representing the town to other people looking. It's not our town. It is not our town. That's why I love this post. It's not our town. It's what we told our kids or even tell them now. I even go further and say, don't post anything that can hurt someone else because everything is public. Isn't it amazing how we forgot that? We literally forgot that we're like in public. I think people would never say these things in public, although they do now. Look at board meetings around the country. People don't care anymore. Superintendents and board members being called Nazis. People being threatened for their lives because they're following a law. That's real. Thank goodness we don't have that here. We have really not had that. And that South Brunswick community page is a small, small segment of how wonderful this community is. And if you look for it, you will find good. But man, some days, that's a rough one. I think as parents, friends, and neighbors, we must demand better from ourselves on this community page. Obviously, this is my opinion, and I am not certain I am right. However, kindness to others can't hurt, but lies and rumors definitely can. Thank you. Have a good day. We're going to continue to do our best to teach that students are responsible for their own words, for their own behaviors. Adults are responsible for their own words and their own behaviors. If we partner with this awesome community, we can flip this. That group of people up there want to do it, and I know the group of people over here want to do it. So we work together, we figure this out, and we get us back on track. We had 18 months, we bring it back. That's my hope. That's the end of my report. Thank you, Mr. Nathanson.
No, I'm just taking my stuff.
And actually, Manny sent that to me before he posted it. And it was like, oh my God. It hit home. And Manny not only volunteers basketball, he does soccer, he does a million things in town. So You did a great job. And moving along, Mrs. Luckborn on our next presentation. Go ahead.
Good evening, Board. Good evening to the members that are here with us in person and for those following along virtually from the comfort of their homes. As you can tell, this evening is packed with many different presentations. This is another facet of schools, right? We've spent some time talking about the pandemic and the safety thus far. We've talked about the SEL and the well-being of our students. Equally important, but taking less of a center stage right now, certainly is the achievement results, and rightfully so. The last time we stood before the public for a formal presentation like this was in the fall of 2019, where we were reporting out on our spring 2019 results. So lots of change has happened, mostly due to the pandemic and testing of our students. So with that being said, some of the slides you're going to see this evening will bring you back to that moment in time of 2019 to allow us to do some comparisons based on spring 2021 and 2019. There are many variables related to testing, and I want to bring you back in time. So in the spring of 20, almost all assessments were paused, rightfully so. Fast forward to last school year, our environment was very much altered from what we know to be familiar to us. We started our year virtual, we moved to hybrid, and as you've heard in the prior presentations, we still didn't have 100% of our students in person. That being said, the federal government and the state of New Jersey still required some students to be tested formally. And by compliance, we are required, after receiving those scores within a certain number of days, to publicly report out, which is why you are seeing this presentation this evening. So the groups that were assessed in the spring of 2021 were our English language learners, our special education students who qualify for a very specific assessment, our students who are at the high school level enrolled in an AP advanced placement course, and of course there were students that participated in the SAT at that level as well. Those are the results that you're going to see presented this evening. There were some tests last spring that were waived. Not all students had to sit for the NJSLA, which is the assessment that's given to students in grades 3 through 11, or 3 through 10, and then certain math courses. Also, the state of New Jersey waived the graduation assessment requirement for the class of 2021. I want to begin with the ELL, the English language learner population. I want to give thanks to Mr. Tom Decker, who is our supervisor of world language and our ELL program, and helping him this year is Jennifer Asamwegi. They were responsible for organizing and administering the test. Our ELL teachers at each building were the point people who worked with the students. In spring of 2020, we had 230 students enrolled in our program. Spring of 2021, we saw an increase of 50 ELL students. An ELL student is defined as someone who's new to the country. It is also a student who has completed a home language survey and been screened here in district that would require additional support. Most of our multilingual households may have students that qualify for this service. Students in grades K through 12 will work with an ELL teacher. What you're seeing on the slide up here is the number of students, which is in the circle on the pie chart, and then next to it is the respective school, along with the percentage of where those students were learning. And you can see from this that the majority of our ELL population certainly is in our elementary schools. Students who come in have 4 years to exit the ELL program. And when you see assessment results coming on the next slide, I'll give you some parameters of how students can exit the program. You'll see that 3 of our schools really have larger numbers. The Indian Fields population, the Greenbrook School, and Brooks Crossing are where we see higher percentages, around that 15, 16% of the students, the ELL students, are there. This next slide is the assessment that those students take. It is the WIDA assessment, Access for ELLs. It measures a student's proficiency with the English language. 4 primary components: reading, writing, speaking, and listening are the components, and then combinations of that make overall scores in the area of comprehension, literacy, oral language, and all of that together makes up a comprehensive score. So our kindergarten students take that one-on-one with their ELL teacher. It is paper-based. Our students in grades 1 through 12 take that online. And then in grades 1 through 3, there is a component of writing that is done with paper and pencil. That test window is rather large. It goes from February typically until the early month of April, somewhere in there. And so they have that time to take the assessment. We get the results right at the end of the school year. On this chart, it shows you in the blue bars on the graph, that is our 2019 results in comparison to our 2021 results, which you see in white. And the N there, the number on the bar is actually the number of students. What I really want to highlight here is showing you to the far right, the 4.5 and beyond. That is that score at which a student would be recommended to exit the ELL program. Students, like I said, can be in that program anywhere from 1 to 4 years, and then they make their way out of the program as they meet those benchmarks or that threshold. One of the things we're working on behind the scenes is really picking that apart, getting a better profile of the learners, looking at how students are performing, in addition to how long it takes them to exit our ELL program and what our curriculum looks like in that area. So that is what is happening in the name of ELL. This is only the second time that we've been required to report out to the public on the ELL results. It's not historically one that was required, but it is at this point in time. The next group of students that I mentioned required to test were our special education students, but students who take the dynamic learning maps assessment. And these are students with the most significant intellectual disabilities within our system. Megan Plummer, who is a supervisor at the elementary level, is one that is responsible for administering this assessment, training the teachers. And this is under Rafael Morales' Department of Special Education. The students take this more along the lines of like a portfolio. It takes multiple opportunities. It's embedded in their natural instruction. They're able to show us what they know. When I mention significant intellectual disabilities, it's the students that are in our multiply disabled special ed self-contained classes that are participating in this assessment. What was interesting about the score reports on this particular assessment was the disclaimer about the interruption to instruction and really to use these results with caution. So what it tells us, and I'll just orient you quickly, is it measures their skills as emerging, approaching the target, at the target, or advanced. It's in ELA, it's in math, and it's in science. Students in grades 3, 8, and 11 are ELA and math. 5, 8, and 11 do the science. And the way we use this is just to see how our students are measuring up in those various areas. You see a lot of emerging, which is not a surprise. It's really what we expect to see, that our students are emerging in that area. And the classroom teachers use those reports to help move students along with essential elements of the curriculum towards those college and career readiness standards. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Fetter, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the AP results and the SAT results. Before he takes over, I'd like to thank Mr. Mike Schiess, who is an assistant principal at the high school who manages these assessments at that level, and the team of staff that work with him on that as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, we'll start with SAT data. And it was a concern for us to see what this was going to look like, to be honest with you. We didn't know what to expect with the big shift in what happened. So to look at this data, we start off with the top row, South Brunswick High School class of 2019. The average at that time for our SAT results was 1254, you can see. The New Jersey average was 1090, and the US average was 1059. So clearly, and that's not really much of a shock to us, that we outperformed the state and the nation here in South Brunswick. We have amazing kids. In 2020, remember that, a lot of those kids in 2020, that was a regular year for the SAT for that class, right? Even though schools went down in March, most students in the class of 2020 would have already tested before that. It did impact, however, the next class who wanted to get in those classes. Remember we could not hold testing, and it was definitely a problem for a while there. But that class as well as 2019, again, did very well. 1250, so about the same. You can see we dropped a slight bit. The state dropped a slight bit, and the nation dropped a slight bit. So we kind of stayed static for 2020. Look at 2021. Look at these kids. Went up. Pandemic did not hurt their SAT scores. Pretty impressive. Average went up, 1262. We became a top 10 SAT score district in the state of New Jersey for public schools. That does not include the schools that only had magnet schools where they take the strongest kids and they put them in the school and then get a great SAT score and say they're the best. It's a little cheating, in my opinion. But we did great for a comprehensive regular high school with 3,000 kids. It's pretty impressive to be in the top 10. So kudos to the high school, the teachers, and the kids. As you can see, the New Jersey went up and the US stayed somewhat about the same. But that's really important to see that these kids survived the pandemic academically if you use SAT as a measure, right? It didn't impact that. We'll have to see how the next SAT goes to see, and the next one after that. If you value the SAT as this end-all be-all assessment, South Brunswick is doing really well. We don't really evaluate it that way, but some people do, and it is an important test. And so congratulations to our kids in our high school. Now, this is another one. This is very interesting. This is where the data gets really kind of funky. This is advanced placement testing. And what we did is we took 2019 results to 2021 results. We thought that was a good way to look at this. And I want to try and do a little bit of data analysis with you tonight. If you can see in 2019, and just by the high school size has not changed. It's been relatively static, right around the same number, between 2,950-ish. Is that about right, Pete? 2,950 to 3,000, right around that number all so far during these years. So in 2019, 891 independent students took an AP test. That was for a total of 1,978 tests total from those 891 kids took that. And their pass rate overall, their participation rate, that represented almost half of the kids took a test, right? So almost 50% of the eligible students who could take APs took a test. Let's fast forward to 2021. I want to talk about something that the high school has been doing, and it's part of our equity work, which is open it up a bit. Let's give more access to students to have opportunities. Let's see if it's been working. In 2021, look at the increase. From 891 kids, it's now 1,028 students took AP tests, or 2,230 total tests. We increased participation rate by 10%. Some of you are saying, no, Scott, that says 5%. No, it says 10%. From 47% to 52% is a 10% increase. It's a little more than that, actually, right? The way that works, just so you know, is 47%. 10% of 47% is 4.7%. Add that in, and you get to about 51.7%, and another 0.5% just for good measure. But it's about a 10% increase from year over year, even though it's only 5% points. So we're thrilled with that. But that alone does not tell a story. You can't just add more kids to one side of the equation without looking at the other side of the equation. What's the other side of the equation? How'd they do? How'd they perform? So these are the tests we're talking about. We're talking about mathematics, calculus, statistics, computer science, biology, chemistry, physics. They take all these different tests. English, Spanish, French, Chinese. We have kids that take Chinese, but that's weird. We don't offer Chinese. But yet we have kids that still take Chinese because they take it somewhere else, and then we let them sit for the AP test. Because why not? They took the class. Let's give them the opportunity. And when they do really well, we take full credit for that. In 2021, same kind of thing. We're looking at the test that we give. It's kind of a general look on what we give. Social studies, you're looking at all those. It's about, what is it, 23, 25 different AP tests, I think, somewhere around there, altogether, that our kids have opportunities. And you know, if in many cases, depending on the school you go to, if you get a passing grade, you get credit, or you get to count that as a class taken at a college level, which helps them free up their schedule sometimes, even if they don't get credits. It gives them an opportunity. And you know, the best version of the AP test I can remember was watching the movie Stand and Deliver. Everyone knows Stand and Deliver? If you haven't seen Stand and Deliver, put it down on your list of watch movies. Stand and Deliver is a story about Garfield High School in South California, and how they turned the ability to get these kids to pass calculus, AP calculus, so they'd have college opportunities. It was awesome. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is very interesting. We just took, what we did here is we just took the test for the argument's sake for now, the frequency test, the most frequently taken tests. That's what these represent. Statistics, comp sci, English, microeconomics, chemistry, calc, and psych. So that's what we took. 2019 on the left, 2021 on the right. Now, what we see right off the bat, the big red numbers, is overall pass rate dropped. It dropped. I'd be concerned about that, except I'm not. Look at the N. The N is the number of passes. We increased from 930 passed tests to 1,163 passed tests in that time. Think of what that says. It says when you give kids opportunity, kind of field the dreams. If you build it, they will come. That's what happened. The high school built strategies to get more kids involved and invested in these high-level tests and courses, and it's worked. Now, you might say, well, it dropped, though, Scott. It dropped about 9%, about 8%. Dropped. The pass rate dropped. Well, you'd have to look and see what was the pass rate. Did the pass rate of the country drop? And we're going to do a little bit of that for you to show you that. You can see, for the most part, across the board in our high school, more kids got passing college opportunities 2 years later, including in between that, a pandemic year. That's amazing. That's what I see in the story of this data. Let's look at some specifics. So in computer science, in 2019, you had 154 kids. 2021, you went up 188 kids. In 2019, 91% of those 154 kids, or 141 kids, passed. And now you saw a drop, right? So if you look at a drop, it's about a, what, about 11% drop, about, in there? And that drop brought you to lower passing rate, but yet because more kids have opportunity, there's more pass tests. Pretty cool. Now, if you look at the national shows a drop of about 4.5%, from 70 to 67, right? That's about the drop. So there was a drop either way. We had a little bit more of a drop, but we got more kids taking the test and passing the test. Chemistry, really nice results. 122 in 1 year, 2 years later, 22 more kids took it, but we had almost a perfect pass rate. Now we have a little bit of less pass rate, but more kids passing. If you look at the pass rate here, 97 to 92 is what, about a 5% drop? Look at the drop from 2019 to 2021. That's a 10%, almost a 10% drop, or a 9% drop. So it's understood that in the pandemic year, less kids nationwide took AP tests. Don't know why, don't have all that yet, but this is the work we're going to do. This is fun. This is crazy fun work if you're like a total geek like I am. Statistics. Not one of our better stories, but still pretty good. So statistics, we had a drop in participation and a drop in pass rate, and yet the nation stayed the same. We still blow away the nation. I don't compare ourselves to the nation as far as are we stronger, but I do look and see trends. It's important to see trends. You can say a lot of reasons why this might have happened. I don't know them all. I think some of these high-level courses, more kids might have not taken them, might not have taken the test, might have been tough learning. I'm not really sure. But what we did see was the drop in pass rate. There was also a drop in participation rate. We would like to see it differently, but that's what happened. Calc BC, same kind of thing. Pass rate stayed about the same, saw a few more kids take it, saw about 11 more kids pass, yet the nation went down 5%. That's pretty good. English language. I'm going to share a little bit more about that one, but this is like one of our highlight stories. It's been a highlight story for like 4 years now. So much credit to the high school for this. Our teachers, our kids, administration. Look at that. In 2019, 147 kids. 2021, 221 kids. That was 60 more passing tests for those kids. Small drop in the pass rate, and yet the nation went up. So we can say, well, that's not good. But I'm going with the 60 more kids got a passing result. I'll take that any day. So pretty impressive. But those numbers, those kids that are saying, I'm going to try the more rigorous opportunity, it's awesome for our district. Microeconomics is definitely one of our areas that had the sharpest decline. And we looked into it, and I'm not going to get deep into it, but it's not really identifiable on the surface level as to what happened. So we're not sure. We can say there's one specific thing about microeconomics that's different from the other ones. There is no prerequisite. Anybody can take that class every given year. That is a defining difference between microeconomics and the other AP courses we're talking about. It is the only actual factor that is completely different of the other ones. Is that the reason? I don't know. But it's interesting. Anyway, when we see this, I want you to know what we do. When we see this, and this is why we look at data, when we look at that, we go, wow, what's going on there? We had a few more kids take it, but a pretty nasty drop. Yet the country went down almost 15% also. But still, that's something happened there. But the country going down by 10% is concerning, right? The pass rate going down 10% in the country. All right, well, that's what, about a 14% drop. And we had, what, is that about a, it's a pretty big drop, about 30%? It's pretty concerning, right? So our job now is to, what went on here? What happened? How do we better support these kids, right? That's what we do. We don't look at data just to report it. We look at to assess our progress, our process, and what we can do better for kids. Now I finish with another great story, psychology. Look at the massive number of increase of kids that took psychology. In 1 year, almost 75 new kids took psychology, AP psychology. I can tell you, at my daughter's schools, both of their schools, AP psychology was considered like, do not take AP psychology. It is just a beast. Don't take it. And here, 75 more kids threw their hat in the ring. Certainly we saw a drop, but look at the drop in the nation, 65 to 55. That's about a 17, 18% drop? And our drop was, similar. Well, maybe 15%, so 15% on either side, but yet we had 46 more pass scores. Awesome. So kudos to our kids, kudos to our high school teachers, our K-8 teachers for getting these kids ready for that. Awesome. Work to do? Yes. Is it the most important data in the world? No. But it is data that runs outside of just South Brunswick. It's national data. We don't write the tests, we administer the tests. We teach the courses. So it is important information for us. Look at our AP Lang on the left. When we first started breaking down this, in 2017, there were 41 students who took that class. This year, 221 took it. The drop from 100% to 89%, well worth it to get 180 new kids having this opportunity. Psych from 115 to 184, yes, a drop in pass rate, but man, a lot of kids taking these tests. It's good stuff, really good stuff. Kudos to this district for doing great, and our families and our kids, they're amazing. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Suzanne, who's going to share a little about what we do to get here.
Thank you. So it's important to have a perspective of what programs and strategies are happening behind the scenes that support our overall mission of moving students forward, moving that needle. And so on the left side, you see the programs. I'm just going to highlight the top 3 bullets there, the K-12 in-class support and in-class resource that's been in existence for a couple years now. The ELL preschool continues to flourish. And the high school transitional English and social studies for ELL students were program enhancements, additional courses that were added. And then down on the bottom, the final 5, is it 5? Yeah, 5 bullets there are things that have been added within I would say, over the course of the pandemic. So the first, and many of these have been funded through the coronavirus relief dollars that have come our way as a district. And so an ELL summer program was in place for some of our elementary students. We have added personnel staff to our elementary intervention team. This is a team of content specialists in ELA and mathematics and district instructional support teachers. At the middle school, we were able to increase the number of staff that support instructional support students in both middle schools. We more than doubled. There are now 6 in each building instead of the historic 2 that we've had. In addition, the high school has been doing lots of work in the area of credit recovery and providing students with that opportunity. And there were some high school summer labs that were getting students back into that learning environment in person that were offered over the course of the summer. And we hope that a number of those will continue as we move forward with the remainder of this year and summer of '22. And on the right-hand side are the strategies. I remember standing up here many, many years ago talking about digital tools, and it kind of seems like a moot point at this juncture because we are so far beyond just a digital tool that's used to enhance instruction when you think of how we've been delivering our program for the past 18 months and getting devices into student hands. Or in Gillingham is a multisensory approach for our reading instruction. We had a number of teachers, elementary interventionists that were trained in that to deliver this targeted intervention to our students, and that continues today. And then on the right-hand side, again, the additional strategies that have come into play of late. I'll begin with the elementary guided reading. It's not that we weren't doing guided reading, but we had an investment in increasing the books in our book closet and training our staff that go along with that. Walking into Sherry Sassine in her work as a supervisor with our elementaries, the number of pallets that arrived to each of the buildings with books and resources. Our teachers are really excited about having these new books to use with students. Think about this. Some of our students haven't had a book in hand for more than 18 months. They've been doing it on a screen or maybe a paper copy. So we're excited about that. We are going to be offering the AccuPlacer. It's another assessment, but at the high school level, we'll be giving it for the students who are ELL, which is another opportunity to show proficiency. The writing workshop model is continuing at our elementary, but also stepping off in our middle schools. We have invested in what's called a DESA Mini. It's a SEL universal screening tool. Our district SEL committee made recommendations and vetted out a number of providers, and this is a quick screening tool, 8 questions, and it allows us to identify students that might be in need. And then, of course, from there, there's another battery of screening that can happen more in depth where our counselors will be involved, and that's launching this year. In addition to the middle school block schedule, has made a complete adjustment in how they deliver their program from a typical school day to be more aligned with an AB type delivery model of program. So those are some of the changes and enhancements that have happened over the course of the year that we are looking forward to seeing what they afford us in years to come, I believe. And that concludes our presentation on the assessments this evening.
If there are questions from the board on pretty much any of the topics, we just spoke for like 2 hours.
Any on the right? Mrs. Rogers, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just have 3 questions regarding first ELL. The percentage increase in the percentage breakdown that we see for the elementary schools, and they'll be moving up into Crossroads North and Crossroads South. And from what I understand from that slide, and I may be misstating this, the percentage of increase to South, will it be more than North? And how are we going to balance, or should we recognize balancing that? Do you understand what I'm saying? You see a lot of those students that are in elementary school
Correct.
Are they more in this, that will be going to south than north?
So it is something we do take into consideration, but remember that because they test each year, some of those students will exit. They don't stay typically for long lengths of time.
Right.
But one of the changes in the program over time is all of the students who are ELL at the middle school level used to all go to South and receive their services there. And in allowing them to stay in their home school sending areas,
Good.
we now share the ELL teacher between the two buildings, and we would just adjust staff accordingly if we had to accommodate for maybe an increase in one building over another. It just might be how the FTE of that staff member split up.
Well, that leads, actually, that's good, because it leads to the next question. You had mentioned they age out after 4 years. If they're
And
not
some sooner, Lisa. Some are definitely sooner than the 4. The 4 is kind of on the high end.
Exactly. But those that are not ready, I mean, is it a law that they have to move on? Or if they are not ready, based on the charts that we saw, and they're at that 4-year mark, what happens?
So their score of the 4.5 is what would exit them from the program. There's another way to exit the program as well, which is their day-to-day assessments of their work, and a team of teachers comes to talk about. But what we find is that when they do exit from the ELL, if they're still in need of some sort of support, it's usually not the language part of the support. They're in the need of the academic support for the skills that are being covered. And then we have the interventionists and the classroom teachers that work on that.
Okay. And then just final question, that goes to what Scott was talking about. When we talked about the AP scores, are we going to be able to see how our honors and academic classes in the future have performed, specifically around those that we changed the prerequisite grades on? Will we be able to see that data too, for the BC student, if you will?
So one of the things we're doing as part of our district goal relates to looking at all of our programs, everything, and looking at disproportionality. And when you look at disproportionality, you're forced to look at how everybody is doing across the board. So our goal is about everybody.
Great.
So everything will be looked at.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the right? Mr. Mitchell, go ahead.
My colleague took good care of it.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I appreciate it. I do have a question about special needs. Those students, do they typically test out of like self-contained into resource and then into regular ed classes, or how does that work?
So the movement of our special education population isn't really based on those assessment results that you saw there. They're really based on their IEP, their individualized education plan, which is reviewed every year. And so depending on how they're performing in that environment, recommendations may be made to change their program in some way, shape, or form. So maybe from a moderate to severe self-contained to maybe a mild self-contained, or maybe to a resource. All of those things happen as part of the IEP process and the assessments that go each year. And of course, there's a 3-year review sometimes with more in-depth testing for our special needs population.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else on the right? Anyone on the left? Seeing no hands?
All right.
You done, Mr. Fetter?
I'm done.
Okay, moving along. We're going to, since reminder to the public and to the board that we are continuing our new format. So right now, we're going to open it to the public on agenda items only. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting are available to the public and can be obtained an advance copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments from all members of the public are made, the Board of Education will respond, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and effective, efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating comments and questions made by other members of the public. I ask you to state your name, spell your last, place of residence, or your group affiliation. So again, this is the portion that the public comments on agenda items only. Anyone interested in speaking on agenda items? Seeing no hands, we'll close the public portion. We move along to, again, our newer part of our meeting, where we're going to review tonight's agenda and agenda section walkthrough. Scott, you want to walk it through, I guess?
Yep. Say again? Okay, so a lot of this agenda was on the last meeting, just so you know, but I'll go quick. As we talked about, 1.1, approval of transfers is pretty standard. I don't know if there's anyone with questions on that one. And again, the financials, so 1.1, 1.2 is kind of the things that David does behind the scenes to make sure we keep running. And we have the bills paid in 1.3. Again, nothing too unfamiliar there. We do have a donation to accept. It's pretty self-explanatory from Brunswick Acres. Thank you to the PTO for a $1,224 donation. And that is going to go towards those water bottle filler stations that we have going on in all the schools. And PTOs have added to what we're providing through the district. So it's great news for the kids. Doesn't happen overnight, but it's going to happen soon. This is the ARP, American Rescue Plan funding. This is the money that's going, most of this is going to the IDA. It's about $402,000, $34,000 for our preschool. Again, nothing too unfamiliar there. We've talked about getting this money, and it's our accepting of those funds. It's kind of a pro forma action there. 1.6 is we have to do a statement of assurance that we're doing the drills we're supposed to do. And so we have James Conroy, who heads this up, and I know I just saw an email from him today to all the principals, remind them of the drills. He's really good about this, keeps it informed, but this is the statement of assurance, which you have in the backup, which is just saying that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. It's important. The security plan is another statement of assurance where we are saying that we're doing the plan as the state provides for us. So these are pro forma basics, but we do have to do them and make sure the board is aware of all of those things. It's all in your backup. Dave, you want to talk about that 1.8?
1.8 is our comprehensive maintenance plan. It's a requirement from the state that requires us to be able to show that we are taking care of our buildings and making sure that we're providing appropriate educational environments. And part of our general budget, general fund each year is provided for maintenance of buildings. 1.9, we went out to bid for a couple of bus routes. K&D Bus Service was awarded those routes at $982 per day per run for 3 runs. And also at the end of 1.9, you can see us awarding that bid to K&D Bus Service. We have 1.10, the approval of our lease purchase agreement resolution. We talked about this at our last board meeting as well. This is the actual lease purchase of the buses that we're looking to purchase, that we will be purchasing at the end of this year. Like I said prior, we've been 5 years into a lease purchase program with Hunterdon County Ed Services. Every year we're at the point now to where all of our buses in our fleet are 5 years or less old, except for a couple of dinosaurs that we keep around. What happens with this plan is that we take those 5-year-old buses that come off lease, we sell them on the open market, make a little bit of profit on them, pay off our balloon, and in the process, we're no longer doing heavy mechanical work on any of our buses. So it has pulled down our costs and costs in the shop with regards to parts, and actually costs in the shop with regards to work and the amount of work that we're doing, because now we're pretty much doing maintenance on our buses. So that would be 1.10. You can see the schedule.
Yeah, let's point out one thing real quick. This is amazing. If you look at the next part, the bid results, we've been offered a rate to borrow over $1 million of 1.1% interest. That's our rate. It's unbelievable.
The rates, yeah, the rates are so low with this purchase that
it's amazing.
The leases that are up this year, we're actually making a little bit of money in our general fund because the payment for these 12 buses will be less than the payment for the 10 that we're moving out.
That's great.
Because of the interest rate.
I'll go to 1.11, 4 of our cases. And I shared with the board this after an executive session tonight, we'll be going over the newer cases that we'll be talking about in executive session. Those will be on the agenda at our next meeting. These are 4 of the older ones. Travel related, we do have Kim and her team will be attending a virtual Frontline Central. Frontline is, Kim, do they run just about everything nowadays? Frontline is a big portion of our backroom work that we do, managing a lot of different staff functions. And Kim and her team are going to just keep growing and understanding all the different functions and features. So it's odd to see so many people going to the same workshop. However, in this particular case, this is extremely valuable. It's over the course of a month, and it will really make a difference in the backroom work that needs to happen to keep the place running. So, Kim, thanks for bringing your team to that one. Student field trips. Jen, you want to talk about those real quick? Are you on that?
Yeah.
1.13?
Yeah, just to share, every field trip we look and vet it through using some extra caution this year. We really are trying to get back to normal, so we want to be able to have trips if they're possible. And key considerations this year, obviously safety, but also the availability of subs, nurses, and transportation. So all of these trips are not hindering any of those items. Most are on the weekend, I believe. And transportation, nurses, substitutes aren't a problem.
And you can see that we've added the work session model to our board agenda. You'll see that on the adjusted document, and that does cover the basics of the board meeting. There wasn't that much today. And remember, we will be doing a work session each of November and December. So as we continue to practice the new format, are there any questions, topics, anything that people want to talk about, any board members about the agenda items?
Just a quick question,
Yeah, go ahead, Mrs. Matter.
about the school field trips.
We obviously asked to approve this item, but there's no cost implication with this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Rogers, go.
Dave, I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused on one point. And that is the bus lease program, the rate that we're now accepting from First Hope for the 1.18. Is that, can that rate be used for any other lease purchases that we have? Can we look at what our lease purchase rates are now and transfer them over to that?
No.
No, why not?
No. Well, when we get into a lease purchase, we're locked into a 5-year contract in that 5-year schedule of payment. I mean, you'd have to purchase your vehicles outright and then refinance them.
Yeah.
But in terms of how the buses are used every day.
Right.
So I'm not so sure we would be able to make that happen. I don't want to refinance our leases.
Right, no, I understand, we don't want to refinance now. Then next year, when we're up for the round of 5, the next round of 5,
right.
Is it possible to utilize, we can't contract with First Bank right now to say no, can't do that.
It's a requirement that we put the bid out to the public.
For the 5 years, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's a bid that goes out to the public, and all 5 or 4 of these banks bid on the same 12 buses and the same amount of financing. So it's a public bid.
So it's a big, okay, thank you. That's all I had, thank you.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? No. Mr. Fetter.
Well, the rest is personnel.
Right.
There's pretty much what's there. I'm not going to really go through each item on there, but are there any questions about any of the personnel items on there? Kim, anything that we have to add specific?
No, nothing for this evening.
Yep. All right.
Okay. So we're going to open it up to old business. Mr. Fetty, you want to walk us through that too?
Yes. So there's a few big topics that we've been talking about I want to share with the board, give the board an update, give the community an update. And the first one is on our health center. Now turn that over to Dave. Just give us a quick update, Dave, if you don't mind, on where we are in the process.
So I just had conversations with Integrity Health and Doug Forster. We had a company today come through our facility at 231 Black Horse Lane. They did an assessment for the removal of walls and the gutting of construction process. So the bid is out on the street. We have contractors who are looking at the bid, looking at the property, and beginning to put numbers together to provide us quotes for the work that needs to be done. So as those contractors are making their way through, the only part that's out just yet is the demolition. They haven't put together plans to the point to where they're ready to do the build back. So as of right now, we're at the stage where we have contractors coming in. We also, Courtney Brown in our office, in the business office, she is our health benefits coordinator. She did put out an email to all staff, and I'd like to reiterate, all of our principals ran for the hills, but I'd like to reiterate to all staff that the health center has a reciprocation availability to where employees who utilize our health care in our district are able to utilize 4 or 5 different facilities around the state of New Jersey and receive health care for some discounted copays, no copays, and no pharmacy charge. So that's a benefit to them, and it gets them the opportunity to get into the health center and see how those health centers operate and the professionalism of the staff. So it's a wonderful opportunity. That email did go out, and our staff is hopefully looking at that and getting ready to maybe take advantage of some of these services.
I want to share also in regard to this conversation I had with Joe, if you don't mind, Joe. I think you know which conversation about finances. And we talked about the health center finances because it gets confusing for the board and for the public on how the monies work. And the anticipated, there's 2 main goals of why you would do a health center, first of all. The first one is, of course, to provide preventative care for our staff, which has a massive positive outlook for kids. People say, well, you're doing this for staff. Well, yeah, we're doing it for staff. You take care of staff, you take care of kids. It's the way it works. But also, as a result of doing it that way, we get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We get to do better for staff and projected savings of about $13 million over 5 years. People say, well, what do you do with that $13 million? That $13 million gets to either go back to the community in lower taxes or back to the kids in programming and support. With the way our outlook is right now for funding, if you just consider for a second inflation, we know we're having massive inflation right now. Everybody can feel it. Go shopping for anything. That's it. But we're still locked into a 2% cap. We are still locked into a 2%, only possible raise in our funding every year is 2%. We're looking at potential increases in the 15% in a lot of our costs next year. Some costs even closer to 30% in some of our costs. Still with a 2% cap. So the idea of coming up with plans to increase revenues or decrease expenditures is pretty much what we have to do, or we'll be talking about what we're cutting, not what we're adding. So the interesting thing is here, the health center has some out money that has to be put out, right? Outlay. And that money is coming from our capital funds, which can only go to capital projects. In other words, people say to me, well, Scott, can't you just take that money and buy more stuff or hire more teachers? The answer is no, I can't. Can't legally do that. The money in a maintenance or a capital project reserve is for these. So while it's going to cost us some money up front, that money is going to have a lot of return on healthier staff and better staff options for medical treatment, as well as, after a period of time, significant savings to the district, where we can then apply those savings to our kids. So I don't know, Joe, does that cover it, Joe? Was there anything else that we talked about that day?
No, I think that was pretty much what we talked about the making sure that the money, you can't move the money from one to another, how to stay within the capital gains.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, thanks, Joe. That's for one. So do we have any conversation, anything on a health center? People questions or topics, discussion?
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Now, about building this, and when do you expect to see the savings?
Yeah, thanks, Joyce.
We're looking for a March opening, March, April, May, a May opening. At this time, we're looking for a May opening.
And about how long, so after a question, about how long before we'd expect to start seeing a financial benefit?
Well, we'd actually start seeing financial benefits and savings once if our faculty starts utilizing the health centers that we reciprocate with.
Yeah.
So we actually start seeing savings once our staff start attending health centers in surrounding community areas. But once our facility is up and running, once the first person walks in the door, we're seeing savings.
But let's expand on that. So when do we actually start seeing that the output of money is back and we start seeing actual returns on that?
I'd give it a 5-month after May.
To see all the money returned?
Not all the money returned, no.
So
it's hard to tell because
when do we become profitable?
Because when do we become profitable?
Yeah.
You're going to become profitable about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yep.
I think is that your question, Joyce? Yeah, about a year and a half?
Year and a half.
We'll take that.
Yep.
Other questions?
Excuse me, David, when exactly is the bids going to be going out for the build? Have they been, the plans have been brought out, or are they going out for? Once
the plans are drawn up and our facilities committee looks at those, we'll have them out on the street for bid.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The next topic was brought up by a few board members. We were, in doing our change to our agenda, the topic of board comments, which is something that happens at the end of our board meetings traditionally, is no longer on the agenda. However, there's a request to continue a discussion about board comments to see if that's something we want to change, keep as we're doing. How do we want to go about that? So I'm just going to open this one up to the floor. Board comments.
I think there are times when board comments are important and useful, but I think there have to be rules and regulations about the board comments, because sometimes in the past we've had somebody make a comment and then everybody repeats that comment, which isn't productive. So I think it's a matter of, if we're going to have board comments, we need to do so with a set of rules about what's, how the comments are done and when the comments are done.
Yes, I had raised this, and I totally agree with Dr. Parker that, first of all, we should be allowed the flexibility to make board comments, not just restricted to agenda items or our committee and liaison reports, but to make comments as we see best for the district. But at the same time, if there's any guidance, as to what you would suggest, then we are ready to listen to that guidance. But I would like personally to see the board comments and communications return to our board meetings.
Thank you, Joyce. Anybody else? Well, that's not a lot to summarize, but I'll try and summarize. Just where this came about is when we had our retreat. We talked about board comments and the way it's been used in the past. And we talked about there being it causes made some challenges in the way we've used it. So according to both comments, if the board agrees, it sounds like the two people that did speak are saying, let's see about board comments, but put some parameters around those board comments. If that's agreeable by the group, we can help put some parameters together and give those out and bring that up at our next board meeting and be able to have that discussion again so we can do it. Joe?
Listening to both colleagues here, I think maybe this should be something that we can look at our next retreat, when we have our next retreat in January, February, whenever the board president says we're going to have that, and maybe it's something we can discuss as a group and kick different ideas around on that.
Okay.
Well,
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
how many sessions of this board will meet before that, Joe, to Joe's point, that board comments would be eligible? What are we talking? 2? Okay, thank you.
Does that sound like a plan, or you know?
Well,
keep going,
I don't know if, you know, personally, I don't know if we have to wait to a board retreat. You know, I think Dr. Parker's suggestion and Mrs. Mehta's agreement, if you came up with parameters for the board comments, we can take a look at that in November and put it under old business and take a look at it.
Mr. President, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Beck.
My suggestion would be that any board member that has any feedback or thoughts as far as board comments to send both yourself, Mr. Federer, and Mr. Pawlowski, their thoughts so that they can use that in putting together the parameters so that we can discuss it at the next board meeting, either come to an agreement or rub it down a little bit further.
Yeah, that's fine.
That sound good, everybody?
Yeah, that works.
I don't know, I have a little issue with that, because a lot of times, I'm only speaking for myself now. I don't know what I'm gonna say till I get here or that day, or, you know, or afternoon. So it's kind of hard to say I'm gonna sit down in the midst of a busy day and write out my comments, because I usually don't. I usually say it off the top of my head and from my heart. So
Mike,
that's just me.
No,
Mike, I think what he's saying is, between now and the next meeting, if you have any ideas on any of the parameters or such, not at the meeting, when you come to a meeting, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have any topics you think should or shouldn't go, send them my way. But if you have something you're going to say,
right?
You don't. No, I never need that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no.
Exactly, Mike. Yeah, we don't want to.
I like control,
Look, it's
Mike,
getting
but that's
late.
too much control.
Okay, it's getting late.
Anyone else? We can move on to,
All right,
to the next one.
Okay, I'll take care of that. Please, if you have any ideas, send them my way and to Dave, and we'll put something together for you guys to look at. No problem at all.
Thank you. Next one's curriculum resources.
Curriculum resources is on here. We had a meeting. We had multiple meetings on the topic related to a specific resource. It also was part of a board meeting, and part of a discussion we had about voting and textbooks and all that. And I think this topic was to see if the board wanted to further discuss the topic of textbooks and how we go about approving textbooks, or the specific topic around the Hindu usage of textbook in 6th grade. So I'll open up to the board to see if there's anyone who wants to have discussion on those topics that have been brought up. There is a recent meeting last night, actually, about this topic in committee. Those notes will be going out to the board, I assume, sometime soon, and that could be agendized for the curriculum committee update next meeting. But to add to that, if there's anyone who wanted to share anything in this meeting relative to that topic of any kind. Dr. Parker.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in knowing what the process is for getting books on the list for our approved textbook. What is that process? Because I'm not sure I understand what that process is. So whether it's just a presentation that goes through the process,
yep,
so that the board and the community knows what that process is, I think would be helpful.
Okay, that's something we could definitely agendize, right? I mean, I don't know if you want to go through it now or you want to just put something together.
We have a whole review process, but the textbook review itself is simple. You crosswalk of the standards. You then match resources, and you have presentations from different vendors. We have a rating system to determine, a rubric system on the quality in different areas of content, matching to standards, cost, and then we make a choice, and then we put it before the board for approval. We recommend to you all of what we want to use, but it's vetted before we have you guys approve it. But I have it documented, and I can share it with the board.
Joyce.
Similar
to Dr. Parker's question, my question would be, what is our district's process for checking for implicit or explicit bias in our textbooks? Is there a process? How often do we do that? Is that once a year, twice a year, or beginning of the academic year? And is there a way for, you know, for anybody really to offer feedback on some of the literature that we're using?
You take that?
I would just say that when the textbook is purchased, it's a substantial cost. That's why it's vetted the way it is. It can cost anywhere from $70,000 to over $100,000 to implement a textbook. So when we purchase it, we're purchasing it for a long term. And as if things change in society, something that leads us to need to investigate and look at it, we would. But when we do the review process of the curriculum, that's when we would look at the content, the resources, and make decisions on what we're using.
And when does that happen?
We review our curriculum. We're on a 5-year cycle. You all approve that cycle every year, so you can see every single curricula that we approve, and it's a 5-year cycle.
So it means each year there's a listing of which curriculum are being addressed during that cycle, and there's a different element of curriculum review for each curriculum at each year. So sometimes you're looking at you're assessing your materials, sometimes you're assessing your assessments, sometimes you're assessing your instructional models. Those are just part of the cycle. So when you purchase the material, what Jen is saying is all of those aspects are there. But for right now, for this particular year and the social studies cycle, to add to that, as you know, we put out an RFP to get a consultant specifically for that design for social studies, where that would be the most, social studies materials and language arts materials are where that would usually come up the most, where there might be issues of implicit bias in materials, specifically social studies and in literature as well. So this year, during our review, that's one of our main pieces.
The standards also had substantial change this year as well. So the 2020 standards, so we do a 5-year cycle, and it's not always that the standards have changed. This year, social studies, along with other curricula, the standards have changed. So I think hence the need for a little in-depth look at it as well.
Anything else?
Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Mitchell, go on.
Yes, are teachers involved in the selection process along with administration?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember Mike myself actually as a teacher and then also as an administrator being on the sides of those. Teachers, teachers get to try out the books and they get them and they use them and they rate them and all of that. Administrators are involved, supervisors, principals, Jen's office. It's pretty extreme.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving along to new business. Mr. Feather, travel quarantine.
Yeah, so new business was going to be talking about travel quarantine. That got nixed to really talk about too much, actually. That's what things change. But it was consideration, do we consider any kind of alterations? And as I shared before, our doctor is pretty clear that you're doing well. Continue to do well. Don't make any changes when you're doing well right now. Let's see what the CDC does and take their lead on this one. So at this point, I'm really not recommending anything at all regarding this. But if it was on the agenda, if there's anyone who wants to add any thoughts to that, feel free.
No, I believe our doctors have been really good, throughout this whole process of COVID.
Dr. Fan is our doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Fan's been excellent.
He works out of Brunswick Urgent Care, and he's been a true asset to this district. And I can tell you, we do pay him, I don't know, it seems like I think we pay him about $1 a week is what it feels like he gets from us. Because he invests so much time with Kim and with James this year, with Raphael. He's just done so much for us in the last 18 months. I cannot say enough about him.
Absolutely.
We email him, he responds, he gives insight, gives us the medical view, and is not afraid to buck the system if that's what he feels is best for our district. So kudos to Dr. Fan. Thank you, Kim, for always keeping him on our list.
Okay, move along.
Can I get an add on new business?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a summer project list I'd like to just talk real quick about. The Budget Committee and the Facilities Committee both met, and we talked about a litany of summer projects that are coming up to fruition during the summer of 22-23. And my guys in the booth just happened to, with all those presentations that were done earlier, I couldn't just talk about it. I had to put numbers on a screen. And these guys in the booth actually took my numbers from my spreadsheet and were able to throw them up in a PowerPoint as we were talking, or Scott was talking about percentages that I couldn't make out. So real quick, just so everybody's aware, Budget Committee, Finance Committee, really Finance Committee started on this probably about 4 or 5 months ago, talking about projects, talking about the health center, and then talking about a timeline that we had to meet to get projects ready for the 22-23 school year summer. That would be actually, the 21-22 summer, which is this coming summer. You're thinking, okay, so we're in October and we're talking about summer projects, but some of these projects have to go out to bid, and the bid process can take anywhere from 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and then we have to make sure that we give our vendors enough time to actually get materials on site. And with supply chain issues, we're concerned. So the idea is to get these projects up in front of the board, get them approved so we can go out to bid and get the process rolling, so that we have plenty of lead time to get materials on site and ready to roll. So real quick, we broke it down into kind of like a district-wide project, and this roofing is district-wide. Right now we're looking at roofing replacements at Brunswick Acres. We have a solar project at Brunswick Acres. The solar array is on the roof, so that solar array would have to come off, and the solar company's charging us those funds, that $145,600, to remove the solar from Brunswick Acres. We replace the roof, they put the solar back on. Same thing's going to happen at Dean's, and then we have a small project at Monmouth Junction, and a small project, well, a whole roof replacement at Dayton. Dayton and Dean's are your 2 oldest buildings in the district. They both need new roofs. All of these roofs are out of warranty. I was cleared on that the other day, yesterday after my meeting with facilities. Some questions came up as to why, we're taking solar off the roof when the solar just went on there a couple of years ago. I can't answer all of that with 100% validity. All I can tell you is that the decision was made to move forward with solar, and now we're finding that the roof is failing, so that solar has to come off and the roof has to be replaced due to the fact that it is out of warranty. If I can get the next slide. We move over to the high school. We have a flooring project at the high school. Last summer we did the 2nd floor at the high school. It was $174,000. This year we're looking at the 3rd floor at the high school, some window tinting. All of these funds on this slide is all from your current operating budget, not hitting any maintenance budgets, not hitting any, not hitting any reserve budgets on this particular slide right here. So this is all budgeted for in your current operating budget. Next slide. We have a project at North and South HVAC project. These projects are for heating, cooling, replacement, total replacements. Both of them, North has already been drawn up with architects. South is in the process now. We were gifted $1 million by the state to use specifically for North's HVAC project. So these 2 projects total about $6.8 million after the $1 million rebate. During the Facilities Committee meeting and Budget Committee meeting, and even Scott at one time questioned the idea of doing a roof HVAC units and windows at South. I had a conversation with Brian Redfield today. He's our new Buildings and Grounds Director. And we kind of sat back and took a little deep breath, and we did come to the conclusion that it would be best if that summer window project at South was moved off for another year, because we wouldn't want to replace all the HVAC and pull out all of the windows in a building the size of Crossroads South in 3 months and expect it to be all put back together and nice and ready to open for school in the end of August, beginning of September. So with that removed, you're looking at this portion of your budget, the 6.8 million, being something that would be pulled from your maintenance reserve. And you also have a $1.7 million pull from all of the roofing projects from your maintenance and capital reserves. And I can show you on the last slide. So your current balance in your reserve accounts is about $10 million. Your 2021 deposit this coming year is a $5 million deposit. So your 21-22 reserves will be it's going to be $15 million. You got 21-22 projects that we just talked about up top, which would be about $8 million. I pulled that out for some weird reason, not so sure. But then you're looking at a 22-23 deposit. The reason I put this up there is that you have to realize these projects aren't going to be completed until the end of summer of 22. We're then going into September, October of 22 to 23 school year. We're going to be making our deposit into our reserves from the 21-22 school year. So that's a $5,000 or approximately another $5 million deposit. So all in, after the $8 million pulled out for projects, you're going to be right around $14 million left in your reserve accounts at the end, when you're at the end of all of these projects. So you'll be in a good spot, still financially sound in the district. But I needed to put this in front of everybody because you're going to start seeing motions on your agenda in the November meeting for the opportunity to go out to bid. Remember, we have to have board approval to go out to bid. Not to approve the jobs, but to go out and solicit bids from vendors to do the work. All of these jobs are estimated at the highest end possible. So there's a low end estimate and there's a high end estimate. Due to what we're looking at with regards to supply chain and regards to supplies in general, we went with the highest estimate we possibly had. So we're hopeful that some of those bids will come in a little bit earlier. But I wanted to put this in front of everybody to have eyes on it, so you could see it, so at your next November meeting, when you see it on an agenda for the opportunity to go out to bid, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing real quick. As you know, when we talked about building the agenda, we're not supposed to do what we just did. That was something that we're not supposed to do. We should not have added a new business here without it being on the agenda originally. But the problem we ran into, to be honest, is we're still new at the new agenda. And in realizing the time commitments, Dave felt he had to do this, and what we should have done is had this, in advance and all of that. But when we get better at this, hopefully we won't make those errors. So I apologize for that to the board, but that's really how it works. And we're just going to keep. We knew for the next 3 months we'd be practicing, so we're going to continue practicing and keep going. But this is important stuff. There's a lot of money and a lot of projects. So open up the projects.
So I want to point out, Mr. Pawlowski, you brought up the fact that we're taking off 2 solar projects, but you also discussed with the budget committee that there might be a way, there might be some possibility that you were talking to the engineers about recouping some of that money.
Yeah, we talked about Brunswick Acres and the way they attached these solar panels to the roof, and how the epoxy, whatever product they used, actually caused the roof to fail in some areas. So we're talking to the solar company and having those conversations with regards to recouping some funds.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Keener, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a concern going back to where you said, Mr. Federer, new business. After new business, we have the committee reports. And Mr. Pawlowski just gave my entire committee report. Isn't that where we're supposed to present new business? Would be from the committee report? My entire report from the committee was to be reported after the action items. So
I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Pulaski, for
I apologize, Mr.
presentation.
Keener.
Board members, I gave you a handout before the meeting, so you can see Mr. Pulaski's words there.
I went rogue, Mr.
I
Keener.
see.
I apologize.
Mr. Keener, if you have a punishment you'd like to administer, just
We'll
send
talk
me
in
that.
executive.
All right, thank you.
I haven't been riced.
You'll be there.
I apologize, Mr. Keener.
Okay.
Yes, a couple of comments or questions. Those high school projects, you said, come out of operating budget. Is that part of like this maintenance plan that we have to approve? That's those sort of
Absolutely.
projects that are on our maintenance plan that we approve
Absolutely.
as part of that?
Absolutely. So for example, at the high school, all of the blinds that are in all of the classrooms are original to the building. So you can use your current funding in your Fund 11 to replace the blinds in the high school. We did a project at Brooks Crossing, Greenbrook. We did a project at Greenbrook. We took all the blinds out and we put in window tinting. The teachers love it, keeps the classrooms cooler. It improves our heating or our cooling costs. And so the idea is to pull out all the blinds in the high school and put window tinting in all of the classrooms.
So it's those kind of projects that are in that maintenance plan
Absolutely.
that we have to show we're maintaining the buildings.
Correct.
The second thing, I understand the issue with the windows and the HVAC, that's a lot to do in a 3-month period.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little frustrating because those windows have been put off before. I
know.
Those windows have been planned to have been
Right.
replaced for many years.
I understand.
And so I'd like to just make sure they get done, if not this summer, the following summer.
The following summer is
We put
the
them high
plan.
priority for that summer.
The following summer is the plan. The HVAC rooftop units at South are 1970s. That's how old they are, completely out of warranty and completely.
Yeah, as I said, it's
end of life.
understanding. It's just that, it's.
And Crossroads North is no better. They're 1980s. So end-of-life equipment to get energy savings immediately, and then window replacement the next summer is the plan.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Smith, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Is it possible that we have a separate section for all the projects on our district website with estimated cost and real-time updates on what is happening with the projects? Eventually, with the actual cost as well, so that the community has everything in one place?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I would run that through your facilities committee.
Okay.
And have that conversation in facilities committee, because a lot of the times the projects move at light speed, and then other times they're absolutely slow like molasses. So to manage that, I'd have that conversation in our facilities committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Nope. Okay. Got a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Parker. I have a second. Second by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, Mr. Pulaski, please.
Mr. Ray Keener.
Yes.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Yes.
Dr. Stephen Parker.
Yes.
Dr. Smith Raj.
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti. Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Move along. Board, committee, and liaison reports. Anyone to the left?
Ray?
No, I've got mine out there already.
Go ahead, Mrs. Banner.
Okay, I'll try to be very, very quick. So the policy committee met today. Myself, Mr. Mike Mitchell, Mr. Nathanson, Mr. Feder, Dave Pulowski, and Mrs. White was there. We reviewed Alert 225, consists of 4 policy updates about health and safety. These protocols should include, not limited to, vaccination verification process, testing intervals, the testing confirmation process, and other protocols. The district is also following protocols as mandated We reviewed policy number 2425, which is the Emergency Virtual or Remote Instruction Program. The revised statute permits a school district to implement a commissioner-approved program for virtual or remote instruction in the event of a school district that is required to close or the schools of the district for more than 3 consecutive days due to a declared state of emergency. These days of virtual or remote instruction will count towards the 180-day requirement. We discussed the language around the terms of domicile, residency, and citizenship as it pertains to our policy and continuing student tuition. We've decided that, the policy now stands as student enrolled in the district for a minimum of 5 consecutive years and is in good standing. The parent will pay the full cost of educating the student. The transportation will be the responsibility of the parents. NJSIAA policies must be followed by both the district and the student in relation to this agreement. And this policy covers students entering grades 5 through 11. All decisions regarding the acceptance or denial of a tuition request rests fully with the superintendent of schools. All decisions will include a determination as to whether the district can provide an appropriate education. That was my policy report. And just to say that as a liaison for the South Brunswick Commission on Women, we held our domestic violence walk last Sunday. It was an exceptional success. Over 160 participants had attended, including administrators. We are very, very grateful to the community and especially to the students, the student volunteers. So kudos to the Commission, to all the commissioners, to all the volunteers for raising awareness for domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scalari, you got anything?
No, I don't.
No. All right, Mrs. Rogers.
Very quickly, the curriculum committee met last night, and myself, Joyce Smitha, and Barry, Jennifer, and Scott. As the committee met last night, the information relative to what was discussed will be on the board portal, and we will go through that at the next committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing nothing on the any more board comments or liaison reports, I'm going to open it to the public with the this is the second opportunity for the public on any topics. Again, I ask you not to repeat yourself. I also ask you to state your name, spell your last, and give us your address. Anybody interested in speaking?
You have registered?
Yep, I have a registration.
You do?
Miss Erin Popolo.
Go ahead, Erin.
Hello, I'm Erin Popolo from Kendall Park. I'm here not as a candidate for the Board of Education, but as a grieving mother. A mother whose child made a decision to end her own life due to the unkind acts of others less than 9 months ago. A mother whose child drowned herself all alone in the dark on a frigid January night. I ask every parent here to imagine how it would feel for you to say those words out loud. I ask every parent to imagine what it felt like to stand at the water's edge while a dive team is in the water searching for my daughter. It's unimaginable, and I actually do not have words to adequately describe the depth of that kind of pain. Perhaps worse than Emily's death was the life that she lived. There is no cure for the shame and the loneliness that chronic bullying leaves behind. There is no amount of love that you can give your child that will counteract it. You cannot outlove the effects of a bully. I know this because I've tried. I tried very hard until it was simply too late. I made a mistake. I believed that the very school who promised to uphold the law would do their best to protect my child, but they didn't. For years, Emily felt unheard, invisible, and unsafe in the very school that promised to protect her and other children like her. If my daughter's story can prove anything, it's that bullying and unkind words hurt people. I have had the privilege of working with this school district on their What's Their Mark, Be the Change project on anti-bullying, which has yet to be rolled out to the students, where the program speaks about how every mark we leave on someone can either be positive or negative. The negative marks layer and build up, eventually becoming too heavy for a person to carry. This rings true with social media as well. In the last week, I witnessed for myself an example of bullying and unkind words on a community forum that personally left a mark on me, a negative one. A person commented on a post regarding bullying, and I quote, "Stop glorifying victimhood. Never seen people so happy to become a victim. Maybe it's the only way that they can think they can get heard. Maybe teach your kids that people are expletive and their opinions don't matter. So if someone tries to bully you, laugh in their face and call them a jerk off instead of killing yourself." This comment was extremely hurtful as a parent who very recently suffered the ultimate loss in life in that exact manner. What was even more hurtful and even more surprising was that there is a member of this current board, somebody sitting up here, who liked that comment. She gave it a big blue thumbs up. Is that what this board is promoting? Do you honestly believe that I am glorifying victimhood? What would you do if this was your child? I wish more than anything in this world that my Emily was here. I wish you could speak to her. She never acted like a victim, and she held her deep sadness inside her every single day for as long as she could, as best she could. How could you like a comment when you are supposed to operate in the best interest of our children? How could you? It is very disturbing to me as a grieving mother, and should be even more so disturbing if you still have a child in this district. The thumbs up like was removed by the board member after I sent an email to Mr. Fetter and Mr. Nathanson the next day. But the damage was done. The sentiment was out there. The sentiment was out there in cyberspace for over 24 hours for the public to see. We need to remember that what we put out there is permanent. This is the message that I know many are trying to instill in our youth. For that once you put something out on social media, it's never gone. Your footprint, or in this case, your thumbprint, is always there. Chances are someone took a screenshot to show to others. In the What's Your Mark, Be the Change program, the committee put a focus on righting a wrong. While the thumbs up was removed, no one tried to right the wrong with me. Mr. Fetter responded with a dismissive "thank you for sharing your concern." The person that I am here speaking about knows avenues to reach me because she did it before, but didn't think to do it this time around or try to right their wrong. As a citizen, my concerns were disregarded, just as my daughter's were. Is this how bullying is being handled in our schools? As we are trying to teach our youth, you never really know who you are hurting when endorsing hurtful, crude comments on social media. Just be kind. My daughter might still be here if she was shown that decency that our township and our school districts are lacking lately. Thank you for your time, and for the other children that are still here, I'm asking every one of you to please be the change for our students, especially the ones that were like my Emmy. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion. Moving along, can I get a motion to adjourn?
No.
Executive.
Oh, executive, excuse me. Motion to move to executive.
Motion.
Moved by Mr. Keener. I have a second. Second by Dr. Parker. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of South Brunswick hereby moves into executive session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10-4-6 through 10-4-21 to discuss the following: HIB matters and personnel. Be it further resolved that discussion conducted in executive session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. Formal action may be taken at any meeting. Good night, South Brunswick.